Hello everyone, this is part 1 of What If Naruto was in high school DxD with female Juubi, and this story is made by X23, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
In a currently unknown place, somewhere in the wilderness, there was a flash of light that quickly died down as quickly as it shone and revealed a beautiful woman standing in the exact same place, who was now inspecting her destination. Said woman looked like she was in her mid to late 20s, stood at an impressive 178 centimeters tall, had fair complexion, and long sun-kissed blonde hair that reached her thighs with two chest-length bangs framing her beautiful heart-shaped face that complemented her blue eyes perfectly with the bangs on her forehead parted to the left side using an orange clip. She was wearing a pair of black shorts that ended just above her knees, a red top which hugged her sexy body. She had a pair of black ninja sandals adorning her feet. A red cloak with black flame pattern at the end that reached till her ankles. She had a voluptuous body that the ladies would kill to have. She had huge DxD cup breasts that were firm and not saggy, a slim waist, a round butt and legs for days. She had all the right curves at all the right places. She looked like a goddess in human form. This woman was Uzumaki Natsumi, daughter of the 4th Hokage Namikaze Minato and the red-hot-blooded habanero Uzumaki Kushina. She herself held a lot of titles throughout her lifetime: Nanadime Hokage, Child of Prophecy, Hero of the Hidden Leaf, to name a few. The latest one was Juubi no Okami, though only a handful of people knew her by that title and all of them had long since passed away. Once she was done inspecting her surroundings, she extended her senses in order to try and find some sort of life in this place. Once she detected a large number of life signatures some few kilometers down south, she started walking in that direction. Well, luckily I am not on some lifeless planet, she finally said to herself, glad to have an enormous luck when it mattered. A new start to life, huh, she muttered to herself while walking, remembering her reason for being in this world. 103 years ago, in the elemental nations. The peaceful world, that she and her comrades had worked so hard towards for 15 years, after the 4th Shinobi World War, was under threat again, by a guy from the same clan, Otsutsuki. Though, this one, called Isshiki Otsutsuki, was much stronger than Kaguya. Even though he wasn't at full power, as he was using a weaker body as his vessel, having lost his original due to a betrayal from Kaguya apparently, he had quickly dominated Natsumi and Sasuke, the two strongest shinobi of their generation, and arguably ever, without much effort. Sasuke had lost his Rinnegan in the initial skirmish and Natsumi had lost her artificial right hand soon after. In Isshiki's personal dimension, a man was hovering some ways above the ground staring down two individuals who had clearly seen better days. He had pale skin, and a long, curving horn which grew from his left brow and wrapped around the back of his skull before jutting outward from his right temple, resembling a crown. The iris and pupil of his right eye is yellow with a black wheel-like pattern with 8 spokes coming out of the center, while his left eye was a Byakugan. He bore matching tattoos on his chest and back. On his chest was a vertical column of 6 Magatama topped with an emblem resembling a black mallet across his chest, and on his back was a vertical column of 6 smaller black mallet emblems. His hair, right eyebrow, and goatee were pale blue trimmed short with unusual alternating zigzag patterns resembling the hair parts worn by other members of his clan, while his fingernails and toenails were painted black. He was dressed in an elegant, slim-cut, white long-sleeved tailcoat with maroon lining and cuffs and an oversized collar that folded back upon itself, over a pair of baggy black pants that covered his bare feet. The coat was embroidered with patterns matching his tattoos, with vertical columns comprised of 8 Magatama designs on the sleeves, and a similar pattern on the back, with the second Magatama replaced with the black mallet emblem. This was Isshiki Otsutsuki. One of the two figures in front of him was of Natsumi, who was wearing an orange jacket and black shinobi pants. She had her shoulder-length hair tied in a low ponytail, with 2 bangs framing her blood-stained and bruised face and smaller bangs covering her forehead. The clothes had holes in various places where she had been impaled, most noticeably her abdomen, near the shoulder and a couple in her thighs. She was missing her right arm, having lost it during the start of the fight. Even though Kurama had healed her mostly, she still had bruises all over her body along with some still fresh blood, from all the cuts and stab wounds, that stained her clothes. The other figure was of Sasuke Uchiha. He was wearing a gray, long-sleeved, collared shirt, over which he wears a periwinkle vest. He also wears black pants, a purple belt, and dark gray fingerless glove on his right hand. His attire wasn't in pristine condition either, having cuts at various places with the blood from those wounds staining his clothes. The left half of his face was covered in blood, having lost his Rinnegan to a stab wound inflicted by their opponent. Both Natsumi and Sasuke were panting heavily from the current fight, but still in their fighting stance, glaring up at their opponent. Why do you continue to resist? It's not like you have a chance, questioned Isshiki, amused by the fight put up by the two shinobi. Well, we wouldn't know until we try everything, answered the Nanadime Hokage before activating her own Mangekyo Sharingan. Her once blue eyes bled their way to crimson with a black six-pronged shuriken pattern, showing that she had some Uchiha blood in her veins, from her father's side, as was revealed to her by Kurama when she first activated the Dujutsu. She continued to channel some more chakra into her eyes, morphing them into something else. Her eyeballs turned purple with several concentric circles around her pupil. The first two of those circles had 3 equidistant tomos along the circumference. She had gained the Rinnegan shortly after activating the Mangekyo Sharingan, when she thought she had lost her now husband Hiroto against Nagato all those years ago. The Rinnegan was a result of the mixing of lineage from both Indra and Asura Otsutsuki through her Uchiha and Uzumaki heritage. Her left arm then changed into an energy cannon and she fired a chakra beam towards the Otsutsuki. Isshiki dodged the beam with ease and was in front of the blonde Hokage in a split second, punching her in the gut hard enough for her to cough up blood and get launched into a distance from the sheer force. Sasuke took this chance to engage the all-powerful Otsutsuki in a close-range combat, so as to provide Natsumi to some time to recuperate. Even though successful in his objective, he was barely able to keep up with Isshiki. Meanwhile, in the distance, Natsumi was getting up slowly. She had been in this dimension for days, before Sasuke, Boruto and Kawaki had come up to get her out, and they ended up fighting Isshiki again. We won't be able to defeat him like this, we will perish before we are able to land even a single decisive hit, Kurama commented in a serious manner in her mindscape. I know, but we have to try something. It would have been so much easier if we could just seal him like we did with Kaguya, answered back Natsumi, trying to think of some way to defeat their adversary. We both know sealing him will do jack shit. The karma has the potential to summon his soul to whoever has been bestowed with the damn thing, whether it is sealed or not. And we don't know just how many of such individuals are out there in the world, stated Kurama. Natsumi knew this. I know. Even while tough, it's easier to kill him than search of some needles in haystack. The only way to kill this bastard is by overpowering him. I do have a solution, though I doubt you will like it, Kurama mentioned in all seriousness. This had Natsumi's attention. She had recuperated enough and was about to go back to the fight, but instead ventured into her mindscape in order to listen to her partner. Soon she was facing the giant kitsune, looking up into his eyes, urging him to continue his idea. Kurama is a red-orange colored kitsune with black fur around his red eyes that stretch up to his ears, and 9 long swiping tails. He also has an upper body structure of a human, complete with opposable thumbs on his clawed hands. Kurama, knowing there wasn't enough time, continued explaining his idea. We tailed beasts are just made of chakra which has been given form and gained consciousness. As such, we don't have a physical body and can merge together and... No. Stop. I don't want to hear any more. Realizing at least one of the end results of the technique, Natsumi interrupted the giant fox from explaining further and turned away, ready to get out and join her former teammate for the fight of their lives, literally. Why don't you just use that power of your Rinnegan? That should let you know of any potential ways to defeat Isshiki, if any besides mine exists, Kurama tried to reason with his Jinchuriki. That stopped Natsumi in her tracks, her eyes widening in realization of the giant fox was talking about. She turned back and looked Kurama in the eyes before replying, "Are you sure it's a good idea to use that? Hagoromo Gigi specially warned me not to use it unless there are no other options, as that has the potential to create more chaos. I have only used that once, and look at the aftermath, it's already much more chaotic than what we anticipated," she added, implying the presence of Isshiki was her fault. Apart her, only Kurama knew of the technique. It would be really chaotic if word got out what she could do. Kurama knew she was right to worry. It wasn't something that should be taken lightly. The greatest of powers have the greatest of consequences. Then don't use it for long time periods like you did last time, maybe just for the next 20 minutes. That should be enough, he replied back. But, what if? The blonde Hokage started but was quickly interjected by the giant Kitsune, we can worry about that later. There won't be anything left to worry about if we don't take our chances now. Natsumi pondered for a moment on the idea before accepting that her partner was right. Taking care of the present problem should be her first priority. Looking into the fox's eyes and nodding, she turned around and left the mindscape. Once outside, she quickly made a single-handed sign and created a shadow clone. You know what to do, she ordered her clone, who immediately activated the Mangekyo Sharingan. Kamui, the clone, whispered the name of technique and was disappeared within the spiral of the technique into her pocket dimension. Natsumi, on her part, focused on the battle between Sasuke and Isshiki, ready to enter the fray in order to help her teammate. Let us go and do our part till then, Kurama, she said out loud to her tenant, who responded with a smirk of his own, yes. Let's. She was then covered in a golden chakra shroud of her 6 paths sage mode. With her Rinnegan activated, she sped towards ongoing battle. It only took her a fraction of a second to cover the distance, and with Isshiki being distracted by Sasuke, she was able to land a punch on his face. Though, that didn't have the desired effect, and the Otsutsuki simply grabbed her hand and threw her against her raven-haired teammate. The two stumbled for a bit before each of them regained their footing and came to a stop. What took you so long? Asked Sasuke. Just having a brainstorming session with my tenant, replied the blonde shinobi before adding, and before you ask, no, we don't have a plan. At least not for the next minute. Do you have any? No, I couldn't think of anything either, and what do you mean for the next minute? Sasuke asked back. Natsumi ignored his question and just jumped into another melee round with the Otsutsuki, hoping to buy some time for her clone. Sasuke just shook his head in frustration before following her lead and engaging Isshiki with her, just hoping to get a breakthrough. Meanwhile, in the pocket dimension. As soon as the clone entered her pocket dimension, she was greeted by sons Boruto and Kawaki, who had been passing time in worry in the pocket dimension since the start of the fight, when their mother had ordered them to take refuge in the dimension. Boruto has spiky, blonde hair, blue eyes and 2 whisker markings on each of his cheeks, a trait he shares with his sister because of being an offspring of a Jinchuriki in connection with its tenant. His hairstyle resembles a leaf, his Ahoge serving as the stem. He was wearing a black tracksuit that had a red fire symbol on the left breast, a symbol that resembled a bolt on the back, and dark pink stripes along the sides of his pants. He had a kama on the palm of his right hand that resembled a black diamond. Kawaki, on the other hand, had gray eyes and bushy black hair, the sides of which were shaven and blonde in color. He also has a tattoo of the Roman numeral under his left eye, a pair of piercings on his right eyebrow, and stud earrings. He was wearing a green shirt with a blue sleeveless vest jacket with gray stripe patterns on the collar and dark pants with a studded belt. He had a kama on the palm of his left hand in the shape of a diamond. How are things going outside, Mom? Asked Boruto. I am not gonna lie, they don't look so good. But don't worry, we will figure something out. That's why I am here. Now give me some alone time, so that I can concentrate, replied Natsumi's clone in a serious manner, clearly ordering the two not to disturb her further. The clone then proceeded to sit in a meditative posture as if to gather natural energy, but instead activated her Rinnegan and muttered, Toki no Miko, Mirai. A tsunami of possible future scenarios started to surface in her mind, one after the other. As suggested by Kurama, she was only watching 20 minutes into the future so as to not drastically change the distant future. The first and last time she used this technique was just before the Fourth Shinobi World War, in order to find a route with minimum fighting and bloodshed. It was a success in the short term, but the consequences of a mortal knowing the possible futures caused a ripple effect, which 15 years after her use, has resulted in a Chumani in the form of one Isshiki Otsutsuki, who she hadn't seen in any of the futures she had observed, and she had observed a lot of them. Boruto and Kawaki were intently observing her. It had been about a minute with her in that meditative state. Suddenly she deactivated her Rinnegan and stood up abruptly, surprising the two teens before she proceeded to dispel herself, leaving the two dumbfounded but worried teens in the dimension. Back with the original. Natsumi and Sasuke were engaged in a melee battle with Isshiki, barely keeping up even with 2 versus 1, when the memories of the clone hit her like brick, making her lose concentration, which resulted in her overstepping while trying to land a punch and Isshiki dodging the attack even easier than before, catching her overstretched hand, throw her away while Sasuke continued to try and hit him, failing each time. Natsumi stumbled for a few meters grunting along, before catching her foothold and coming to stop, just mulling over the information she got from her clone and grimacing. How many, this time? Asked Kurama knowing what was going on in her head. 14,605, she replied somberly. How many did we win? He prodded further. 1, she whispered back. Using my idea. He asked further. Natsumi's silence was everything he needed to know. The blonde didn't know how to reply to that, though she didn't need to. But, you guys can't. Natsumi tried to fight back but was interrupted before she could put forward her argument. You saw north of 14 million scenarios, the only way to win this is using this method. Either we use this and sacrifice a few mindless beasts or we all end up dead. It is an easy choice. Natsumi was torn between the choices she had and already had tears welling up in her eyes thinking of the consequences. Seeing this, Kurama decided to make the choice instead of her. I am summoning the others, and I am sure they will come to the same conclusion as well, even that damn Tanuki. Saying this, Kurama cut off the connection and proceeded to connect to his siblings, relaying the information they had. Natsumi on her part, decided to honor her friend's commitment and rubbed the tears of her eyes just as Sasuke decided to join her, not of free will, as he had been thrown in that direction as well. Kurama has an idea. We need to buy him a couple of minutes, without dying in the process. Natsumi relayed Kurama's message to her teammate. Easier said than done, grunted the Uchiha as they both stared down the Otsutsuki who was leisurely closing in on them, not at all doubting his victory and just reveling in amusement that this fight brought him. I ask again, why do you continue to resist? Just give up and hand over your sons. They are all I need from you. You are otherwise worthless to me. I will spare your lives if you hand them over, Isshiki taunted them. This enraged Natsumi. What kind of parent hands over their children to a maniac? It doesn't matter if one of them adopted, they're both my children and I will die before I hand them over. Too bad for you then. I am gonna beat you down and then proceed to take your sons in front of you while you helplessly lay in the pool of your own blood. I will then kill you slowly in front of them. That ought to break them as well, Isshiki countered with a sadistic smile. Natsumi was about to let loose in an enraged state, but she suddenly felt a tug from her mindscape, signaling her that Kurama was ready. Making a single-handed sign, she bellowed, Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, summoning over 1,000 copies of herself who proceeded to attack the Otsutsuki, buying time for the original. Natsumi activated her Mangekyo, opened a portal to her pocket dimension. Sasuke, come with me. This shouldn't take long. Nodding to her, he followed her into the portal, which then closed behind them. All the while, the clones tried to overwhelm the Otsutsuki with their numbers, trying to buy the original some time. Inside the pocket dimension, both Boruto and Kawaki sprinted towards the two heavily wounded shinobi. You both are back, did we win? Asked an hopeful Kawaki. Unfortunately no, but apparently, your mother has an idea that might help. We are just recuperating for a bit, Sasuke answered back, making the three look towards the only kunoichi in the group. I don't have one, Kurama has one. You guys rest for a bit and let me go and see him in the meanwhile. Saying this, she just sat down cross-legged and entered her mindscape, not wasting any time. Inside Natsumi's mindscape. Once inside, she could see all the tailed beasts circling around her and looking at her. The Ichibi, Shukaku, is a sandy brown-colored tanuki, with black, dark blue in the anime, cursed seal markings all over his face, body, and tail. He has a jagged, concave mouth with no tongue, and the sclerae of his eyes are black, with yellow irides and pupils that each takes the shape of a black four-pointed star with 4 black dots around it. The Nibi, Matatabi, is two-tailed cat, and is completely engulfed in blue and black flames. She has heterochromatic eyes, the right being yellow and the left being green. The Sanbi, Isabu, resembles a large turtle, but with a crab-like shell, spikes all over his body, and 3 shrimp-like tails. Under his shell, he has red, muscle-like tissue. He has a pair of human-like arms and hands, but no hind legs. His face is concealed between a large forehead and lower jaw, both of which have spikes. His eyes are red and have crimson pupils. The Yonbi, Son Goku, is a red-furred and green-skinned monkey, with a body build of a gorilla. He has eyes with yellow irides and white pupils, spike-like protrusions along the length of its tails, elongated blunt fangs, and two long horns curving upwards on his forehead like a crown. In his mouth, Sun doesn't have a tongue, but has an opening that is shaped like a dome volcano. The goby, Kuoh, resembles a white horse, but with a dolphin's head. He has two pointed long horns and three shorter horns in front. The ends of his horns, hooves, and tails are tan, with some of the same colored spots before the tan areas of his horns and hooves. He also has red markings under his dark blue-green eyes. The Rokubi, Seiken, is an enormous white bipedal slug with stubby arms, feet and 6 long tails. He has 2 prominent optical tentacles for eyes and hole-like openings as a mouth. His entire body is covered in a thick, slimy substance. The Nanabi, Chome, resembles a blue, armored rhinoceros beetle, with 6 of her 7 tails resembling green insect wings, along with an actual 7th tail, all growing from the end of the abdomen. The stem of the tail is green but the wings are orange. Her eyes seem to be covered by a helmet-like skull, from inside of which, an orange glow can be seen. She also has spiked protrusions on her shoulders and a row of slits on each shoulder, and 6 legs, 3 on each side. The legs are also covered by the blue armor, with the exception of extreme ends which are green in color. She has 2 pincers with 3 parts on her face, covering a mouth full of sharp teeth. On her back behind its head, it has a large 2-sectioned horn protrusion. Gyuki, the Hachibi, is an Ushioni with 4 long horns on his head, similar to that of a Jacob sheep. Though, the horns were not complete, having been destroyed in previous battles and had not completely regrown yet. He also has straight teeth. He also has a muscular upper body structure, with a hunched back similar to an American bison, arms with spiked protrusions on the elbows, and hands with opposable thumbs like that of a human. Instead of hind legs, his lower half consists of 8 tails, which resemble the cephalopod arms of an octopus. And finally, the Kyubi, Kurama, completed the circle. It was Seiken who decided to speak first. Kurama has filled us in Natsumi Uzumaki, gaining her attention, and we agree with him. We would like to save this world, our father risked his own life for, and the one where our one true friend resides. All the Bijuas nodded at his words, showing that shared his thoughts. This brought fresh tears to Natsumi's eyes, mainly because she was overwhelmed by the fact that the Biju considered her precious enough to sacrifice themselves to save her and her world. But she still couldn't bring herself to do that. I still don't want to sacrifice you guys. As you said yourself, you guys are my friends. I can't ask you to do that for me. She tried to argue back, again, in hopes that they will back down. She did not need to show her strong side which she was showing to her kids, so as to not make them worry, she could be more free with the Biju. Natsumi, it was Son Goku this time, prompting her to look in his direction. Each of us has lived for a long time in this world, and have seen a lot of things. For most of us, you were our first friend, the first person who understood us apart from our father. We can't just sit back and watch as you are in danger. This idiot fox. Oi, grumbled Kurama, but was promptly ignored. Goku continued, should have called us sooner, I don't know what took him so long. Thank you for everything you did for us and for being our friend. Now it's time for us to do something for you. As the monkey said, it's time for us to do something. And we would do it regardless of your opinion, so you better buckle up for the ride anyways. You would have done the same thing if you were in our shoes, wouldn't you? Asked Kurama with a smirk, knowing he was right. Natsumi knew it was true and she decided to stay silent, just smiling sadly at the thought of losing some of her friends. She turned towards Shukaku, Matatabi, turning towards the respective Biju as she said the names out loud, Isabu, Son Goku, Koko, Seiken, Chome, Gyuki, Kurama, turning for the final time to look up at her oldest partner with a sad smile, I am glad, I got to meet you all. I am happy, I got to befriend you all. And I am really sad, that this is how we are gonna say goodbyes. But, I can promise you 2 things, for as long as I am alive, you all will never be forgotten. This brought on sad smiles to all their faces, and I am gonna make that bastard pay. And you know that I never go back on your promises, the Bijuas finished for her, increasing the tears that were now freely flowing from her eyes. Okay, we don't have much more time, let me explain what is gonna happen, even if you know, so that we know all us are on same page and I know you have most probably skipped the consequences and our reasoning. Kurama stole her attention, Natsumi nodded at him. She did see a lot of possible futures, but she didn't have enough time to look into the details. She was fighting for her and her people's life at the same time after all. All of us are gonna merge with you, essentially making you a 10-tailed yokai. And we know you are gonna be a yokai instead of a tailed beast as you are made of flesh and blood, unlike us. Us merging with you would just restructure your existing body so as handle the extra power, the fox continued. This didn't surprise her, she had already seen this part. The reason we aren't just making you our or the 10 tails Jinchuriki is simply because you won't be able to use all of our power effectively in that case. Your body can only take so much of strain before it decides to stop the flow of power. Natsumi nodded in understanding. Even if it was much less now, she did feel some strain from using Kurama's chakra. She can imagine that her body will be a bottleneck if she were to channel all of the Bijuu's chakra through her, and hence the output will be much less than what it should be. We don't exactly know what type of yokai you will be, though I am sure you know that particular answer. The fox continued. Natsumi nodded again, she knew. But we do know, you will be a Juubi of some kind, as we were originally part of a Juubi before we spirated. Though on a power scale, you will be much stronger than the Juubi we have fought before, mainly because, having my chakra in your pathways from birth and having housed all of us for a short amount of time, has increased your chakra capacity to slightly larger than my own. This caused Natsumi's eyes to widen. This was news to her. And the fact that it will all be yours to use, you will be able to use more of it than what you would be if you simply became our Jinchuriki. The fox explained further. Natsumi was about to ask something, but was quickly shut down when Kurama continued, and I know what you are gonna ask, that why don't we, the Bijuu, fight him ourselves, as we can use a 100% of our chakra by ourselves, right? Natsumi nodded at that. She smiled slightly, thinking her tenant knew her so well. Fighting side by side only adds our power at best. It was Gyuki who answered the question. You already a Kyuubi in terms of power, maybe slightly stronger than Kurama himself. You were fighting with the 6-path Sage mode activated, alongside your Uchiha teammate, without any fruits. We are not gonna win with numbers, as individually, we can be counted, but when merged, our powers stack together, they add together and then amplified on top of that. There was a reason that the Juubi was stronger than all of us combined. Natsumi nodded again. Now that it was said out loud, one of the memories of the clone who saw the futures resurfaced. It was of them doing the exact thing that Gyuki and Kurama mentioned, and fighting together and failing miserably. She had just seen the one winning future after the clone has passed on its conclusion in summary, as she was still in a fight then. She turned to Kurama again, continue the explanation, we don't seem to have much time, it's only been a minute and a half, my clones are already gone. Isshiki has sped up as well. A tick mark appeared on Kurama's forehead, it was you who interrupted me, you damn brat. Nevertheless, he calmed down and continued, the next part is all speculation, as you will be the first human to be merged with a Bijuu. You will most probably gain our individual traits and specialties, apart from gaining some new powers of your own. But you most probably already knew that as well. Natsumi acknowledged that as well. The final thing you will gain is an incredible healing factor, better than what you have now because of me. So incredible that I doubt anything short of vaporizing you would work, if anyone would want to kill you, Kurama added. Natsumi whistled at that. Awesome, sounds cool. No wait, she realized something, wouldn't that make me almost an immortal? She asked, dreading the answer. Fortunately for you, the answer to that is no. But unfortunately, I am not exactly sure, Kurama answered with the truth, my speculation is you will still age and die of old age someday. But your new healing factor will slow down the aging process to a crawl at best. You will most likely end up living for thousands of years at least. Natsumi's expression said it all. She was dreading it before having to sacrifice her friends, but now she was re-evaluating her decision again. Even if it's not set in stone, there is a high probability of this happening. I know it's gonna be hard, Kit. But this is the only option we have. It's either this or we lose, you lose everything. Kurama tried to encourage her, so she stops doubting this decision. I know, Kurama. I know, the blonde woman tried to console herself as well, readying herself for the inevitable. Just so you know, Father mentioned this to us, that there are infinite number of worlds out there. There will be one out there that might satisfy all your needs. You just need to explore to find it, added Kuoh, trying to console his friend by providing her with some info she could use in the future. Yeah, I remember him mentioning seeing glimpses of some of those worlds due to his connection with the Ten Tails and Rinnegan. Ishibu extended the information further. This consoled Natsumi a little. Thanks guys. I will try to be positive about things. I promise. She smiled a little. It wouldn't do her good second guessing everything. This is the only option. It's this or I would have failed everyone else as well. She consoled herself back to normal, for now. That's the Natsumi Uzumaki, we know. Always positive, exclaimed Chome, making Natsumi and the others smile a little. Oh, and our souls will stick around for a few minutes. So, if you want to show us his decimation, I would advise you to quickly dispatch him, instead to taking your time, Kurama added. You bet, I will. I will annihilate him, for your viewing pleasure, Natsumi smirked, having wiped away her tears and smiling up at them. Let's do this then, all the Bijuus exclaimed simultaneously, before each of them made a contact with the Bijuus on either side of them. The whole place was illuminated in a bright light, before the light started condensing in on the center, revealing a 10-tailed figure. Outside Natsumi's mindscape, Sasuke, Boruto and Kawaki waited patiently was Natsumi to get out of her mindscape when suddenly, her body started emitting a bright light, covering her figure entirely and forcing them to shield their eyes, lest they go blind. They uncovered their eyes once when the light dies down and were gobsmacked what they witnessed. Natsumi still occupied the place, but she was different. Her body had healed itself of all injuries, which even Kurama could not heal. She had even regrown her missing right arm. Golden wolf ears had replaced her normal human ones on top of her head, and she had 10 wolf tails, with golden fur that matched her hair and ears, sprouting from her lower back, lazily moving about behind her. Her once purple Rinnegan was now blood red, with the third circle from the center also gaining a 3-tomo pattern. Only Sasuke knew what this was, as neither of the other two occupants of the pocket dimension had ever seen this before. The Rinnegan Sharingan, the strongest doujutsu in existence. It wasn't everything, she was now exuding power that none of them had ever felt in their lives. It was Sasuke who spoke first. It's still you, right, Natsumi? He questioned. Even though this person looked like his teammate, she didn't feel like her. Yes, it's me, she smiled at her teammate and her sons. Though, Sasuke could tell, there was some sadness hidden in that smile, but he didn't probe into it further. She will let them know once everything is over. Before they could question her any further, we don't have much time. Isshiki has already almost destroyed my mini army of clones. I need to get out there before he decides to get to the elemental nations and wreak havoc, the blonde said. Okay, let's go. Sasuke moved forward, ready to exit the dimension with the blonde Hokage. Natsumi raised her hand towards him to stop him. No, only I will be going alone. You stay here. You already have taken a lot of damage and is no condition to continue any further, not that I need any help now. Sasuke would have rejected the idea normally, knowing full well who they were up against, but knew from her aura that she would be fine. In fact, she would be more than fine. So, he just nodded and decided to sit down and relax. Give him hell, Mom, Boruto cheered her mother. Natsumi could still see some worry in her son's eyes, but she also saw that he had confidence in her as well. She was about to reply back before Kawaki decided to speak up. Mom. This surprised Natsumi very much, as it was the first time he had called her that, despite her asking him for this several times over the last year. Come back safely, he continued. Natsumi smiled and moved towards her two sons, before taking both of them in her embrace and finally spoke. Yes, I will give him hell and come back safely, to you, and to Hiroto. Don't worry. Having said her piece, she broke the embrace and opened a Kamui portal to Ishiki's dimension. Now that she had Rinnegan Sharingan, she didn't need to activate her other forms of eyes to gain access to their powers. Wait for me here. It shouldn't take long. Saying this, she flashed a smile to the three occupants of her dimensions, before quickly exiting the dimension through the portal. In Ishiki's personal dimension. Just when Isshiki managed to destroy the last clone, he sensed a disturbance in the air just behind him. So, you finally decided to show yourself, huh? I was getting bored with these clones. Not that you can do any B. He stopped midway when he turned around to see Natsumi exiting the portal. He didn't need to observe the changes in her appearance to tell him that she had changed. The amount of pressure her chakra was now exerting on him was immense. Let's finish this. I don't have much time, exclaimed Natsumi before channeling some chakra through her legs and launching herself towards her foe. Much quicker than the Otsutsuki could react, she had covered the distance between them and had stabbed a kunai through his right eye. That's for Shukaku, she exclaimed, making said Biju smile in her mindscape. She didn't relent and continued her assault by crouching down and landing an uppercut in his chin, launching him up in the air. That one was for Matatabi, she exclaimed again and jumped after him. Before Isshiki even had time to comprehend what was happening, she was above him in the air, with her right leg up above her head, which she then brought down on his head, sending him to the ground. That was for Isabu, she said before flying down towards the point Isshiki was falling. She reached there before Isshiki and proceeded to roundhouse kick him in the cheek before he even reached the ground, sending him flying off into the distance. That's for Son Goku, she continued, presenting each of her hits to one of her friends before she launched herself again toward the now one-eyed man. She was onto him just as he had managed to regain some of his footing, but he didn't have time to react as Natsumi proceeded to jab another kunai into his other eye, effectively blinding him. That's for Kuoh, you bastard, she continued before punching the now blind man in his stomach, making him double over and cough blood. That's for Saiken, she muttered this time, since he was close enough to hear her. She gathered some chakra in her right palm before hitting the Otsutsuki with an open palm thrust strong enough to send him flying several feet away, simultaneously applying a seal on him using Gyuki's ink techniques. Tamashi no Sokubaku, she muttered the name of the technique. She had initially designed the seal for stopping Orochimaru from possessing others' bodies, though she never got a chance to use it till now. That was for Chome, she exclaimed and proceeded to clap her hands together in order to use the technique that had created the moon of their planet. This is for Gyuki. Chibaku Tensei, she shouted, activating the technique and creating a small ball of really high gravity near Isshiki's body, which had now started to attract big chunks of rocks that had broken up from the solid ground they were fighting on. You need to finish him, Natsumi, and not just seal him away, warned Kurama from her mindscape. Don't worry, have you not noticed I haven't gifted you with a hit yet? I am gonna finish him off, replied back Natsumi, easing the worry that each of the Biju were feeling. I hope it's grand, then, smirked Kurama. Yes, it will be. It's a new technique that I just acquired with the Rinasharingan. You guys will love it, Natsumi smirked. She was gonna use the technique for the first time, but she had already seen herself use it. Their little chat was interrupted by the voice of Isshiki, who was trying to free himself from the technique but failing to do so. Do you think this will stop me forever? His lower body was already trapped in a formation of rocks, with one of his hands caught in it as well. He was using his remaining free hand to try and claw himself out, failing in doing so though. Even if you succeed in sealing me away, I will return soon, and his monologue was cut short by a boulder that hit him in the face, quickly joined by a few others, effectively burying him in the center of ball of rocks, which had started to resemble a moon. Oh man, we were just spared an excellent speech, said Natsumi sarcastically, earning a snicker from the Bijuas, which quickly turned into a full-blown laughter in which she happily joined, as she started levitating, the ground under her feet having been attracted by the gravity of her technique. In the meantime, the ball of rubble was getting bigger and bigger, and had now started to resemble the moon. Natsumi soon stopped laughing and turned serious. She extended her right hand forward, her palm facing upwards, and then moved it upwards slowly, controlling the gravity ball at the center of the moon. The artificial moon started to move upwards with her gesture while continuing to get bigger and bigger. Soon enough, the moon was obscured by the clouds, so Natsumi decided to follow after it, to make sure it was ready for her final attack. Susanoo, she bellowed, forming an orange perfect Susanoo in order to protect her. She continued until she was above the clouds and had a clear view of the moon. In a couple more minutes, the moon was complete. It was now as big as the one back in their world. Focusing her eyesight on the moon, she channeled chakra to her right Rinasharingan. This is for you, Kurama, she shouted, hoping that the bastard whom she could still sense at the center of the moon was able to listen to her. Hirui no Nai Hakai, she called out the name of the technique, activating and converting the entire mass of the moon into pure energy, which expanded in a blinding explosion, vaporizing Isshiki instantly and continued to expand outwards, ready to destroy everything that might come into contact. And he is dead, vaporized into oblivion. How did you guys like that? Asked Natsumi to the occupants of her mindscape, really wanting to see their expressions. The tailed beasts didn't respond for a couple of seconds, trying to get their jaws back to their original places, after they had comically fallen to the ground in amazement of the pure destruction. Kurama was first to compose himself. Awesome, he exclaimed, excited to see this level of destruction, something I approve of, definitely. The other tailed beasts just nodded in approval, too excited to say anything. The blast energy and shockwave soon reached where Natsumi was observing from but didn't damage anything on her Susanoo and went past her towards the ground, annihilating it as well once it struck there. Natsumi for her part decided to venture into her mindscape, ready to say her final goodbyes to her friends. Just the thought of it brought back tears into her eyes. She didn't want him to go, but she couldn't do anything about it. Inside Natsumi's mindscape, she was once again at the center of a ring formed by the tail beasts, who were all staring down at her. Don't cry, Natsumi, send us off with a smile, Kurama started, trying to console her former Jinchuriki. Yeah, we have lived a long life, and I guess, this is our well-deserved rest, Son Goku added. And the last thing we want to see before this leaving this plane of existence is the smiling face of our only friend, not one filled with tears, Matatabi added further. Natsumi wiped her tears with her hands before looking up at them again, trying to smile as best she could. Okay, I will try. I can't promise this though. Everyone went silent after that, creating a heavy somber atmosphere. Before we go off, I just have one question, Shukaku said, trying to break the tense atmosphere. I know those ears and tails belong to a wolf, but why wolf? None of us are related to that. Everyone started pondering the same question. All of them had that question, but somewhere in the excitement of the events, it was forgotten. Kurama decided to explain, I think I can answer that. Wolves are known to be strong-willed, loyal to their pack and with strong spirits. Those are the characteristics that Natsumi most strongly exhibits. Hence, when she was transformed into a yokai, she became the Juubi no Okami. Oh, here I thought I was be a fox for sure, muttered Natsumi, getting a smile from Kurama, though, it makes me happy to know that you wanted to be Kitsune yokai. I think, wolf suits you better, making Natsumi smile at the compliment. Suddenly all the tailed beasts started levitating. I think it's time for us to go, Chomei said. This brought on fresh tears into Natsumi's eyes, but she smiled nonetheless. She wanted to send them off with a smile as it was their last wish. She started turning towards each of the Biju, showing them her gratitude and sadness through her smile. Shukaku, Matatabi, Isabu, Son Goku, Kokuo, Saiken, Chomei, Gyuki, she settled on Kurama. Kurama. I want to thank you all for what you did for me. I am gonna miss you guys. You all are my precious friends, even though some of us didn't start on good terms. I will always remember you. You are our friend as well, Natsumi. And we are grateful to you, more than you will ever acknowledge. Well, that's what makes you, you. Thank you for being our friend. Thank you for everything. Thank you. And goodbye, smiled Kurama sadly. All the tailed beasts smiled down at her before they all vanished. Natsumi raised her hand in the air towards her longtime partner as if to stop him from leaving before breaking down into tears. Goodbye, my friends. Goodbye, Kurama. Outside Natsumi's mindscape. Once she opened her eyes, she was once again surrounded by the orange chakra of her Susanoo, though, outside that construct she recognized that she was back in the elemental nations, hovering in space somewhere above the fire country. It seems the dimension got destroyed by the energy and I was transported back, she thought, before she activated Kamui and disappeared in her pocket dimension, leaving behind the Susanoo to dissolve in the air. In Natsumi's pocket dimension, she appeared in front of her teammate and her sons in her dimension, deactivated her Dujutsu morphing them back into her blue eyes and gave them the good news, before explaining to them everything that happened. She left the dimension destroying stuff and the future viewing stuff and the extended life period out of the explanation though. It was best to leave some things in the dark. Before leaving for the elemental nations, she ordered them not to say anything about this to anyone without her permission. It would be quite dangerous if the truth of a being as powerful as her got out into the open. She didn't want to be worshipped or worse yet, feared for her powers. Once all was said and done, she proceeded to apply a seal onto the back of her right hand, using the ink techniques she gained from Yuki, sealing her newfound powers preventing people from discovering them. A seal in the form of number 10 appeared on the back of her right hand and her wolf tails and ears retracted into her body. Her original human ears forming back. They then went back to the elemental nations. Back in the elemental nations. Once they were back, they traveled back to Konohagakure, before each of them resumed the daily lives. Natsumi did decide to tell everything to her husband Hiroto as she didn't want to keep him in the dark. She was a bit afraid to see his reaction though. She was already dreading outliving everyone she loved, but it was a price she had to pay in order to save everyone and a price she was willing to pay as well. Her husband, being the sweetheart he is, just smiled and hugged her, saying he was fine with her choices, bringing tears of joy in her eyes. He also consoled her regarding the things she had and will have to endure in the future and made it known that, should she actually were to live for that long, she should live happily, find new people and help others instead of moping around. Natsumi promised her husband to follow his advice. She had after all promised the Biju something similar as well. Everything went smoothly after that. She did have to call in a cage summit, relaying back the events of the fight, and the sacrifice of the tailed beasts in order to stop the Otsutsuki. She did change the story quite a bit. In this version, the tailed beasts fought side by side with her, before sacrificing themselves in self-detonation, taking the Otsutsuki out with them. Over the next decade, it became apparent that the part about her extended life that she was worried about, did come true. Even considering her Uzumaki lineage, she still hadn't aged a single day, appearance-wise. And her healing factor was indeed off the charts. Well, in hindsight, she already knew about the latter. She did in fact regrow an entire arm before her annihilation of Isshiki Otsutsuki. She had to develop a seal that helped her conceal her true appearance from the outside world, preventing other people from knowing that her aging has slowed down to a crawl. The seal basically made her look as if she were aging normally. And since it was seal that concealed her appearance, she had no risk of it being detected by a dujutsu. Several decades passed peacefully like this. Natsumi had transferred the Hokage hat to Konohamaru, who himself had chosen a successor in her goddaughter Sarada. Natsumi had lost all of her friends to old age as well as a lot of their children as well. She had disappeared off though after Hiroto had passed, having faked her death in order to avoid getting people to search for her. She had spent a lot of time at Mount Myoboku with the toads, just doing different things from training to lazing around to playing with the young ones. But she did return from time to time, discreetly, in order to check on her kids. Though, when Himawari's son, last of her grandkids, passed away, she didn't want to feel like living in the elemental nations anymore and decided to work on seal that can transport her to a different world at random. That random part was important. She thought that to truly enjoy the thrill of exploration, the new place shouldn't be selected on her thought process. It took a couple of months for her to perfect the seal. She said her goodbyes to the toads, showing them her gratitude for harboring her for so long, and then went back to the elemental nations in order to use the seal. She was in a forest near Konoha. The sky was covered with dark clouds, showing that it was gonna rain soon. Perfect, smiled Natsumi, having completed the engraving of the seal on the ground using a stick. The rain will remove any traces of the seal in a couple of minutes, preventing anyone else to use it. It was a random transporter after all. Even she didn't know what kind of place she was gonna end up with. But she trusted her gigantic luck. Anyone else might end up dead after transporting to the middle of universe in the vacuum of space. But, I trust my luck enough to leave my fate in its hands, she added before standing in the center of the seal. She poured a lot of chakra in the seal, which began to shine brightly. The blonde former Hokage was covered in the light before it died out, revealing an empty space at its center. It started pouring soon, removing all traces of the seal as intended. Present time. While still reliving the memories, Natsumi had reached a cliff. When she looked down, she could see a town down below, glittering because of all the lights from the buildings, houses, street lamps and some metal contraptions on wheels that she did not know about. Making sure no one was nearby, as she did not know what was the norm in this new world, she decided to jump down the cliff. Once she had reached down, she walked towards the town itself. Soon, she was wandering the busy town streets. Luckily for her, the local population looked exactly like the people back in the elemental nations. Till now the only thing that seemed different were those metal contraptions which had people in it and the fashion style. Surprisingly, even the language was familiar. I always knew my luck was awesome, especially in these circumstances, but this is something next level, she silently laughed to herself. She continued walking aimlessly, until her eyes landed on a food stall, which seems to be selling ramen. She decided to visit the place and proceeded to sit down on one of the stools before deciding to order, "One miso ramen please." The owner of the stall smiled at her and replied, "One miso ramen coming right up." Natsumi decided to start a small conversation with the stall owner in order to get some information. "My name is Natsumi, how are you doing today? I was just backpacking across the country when I reached this town. I am not sure where am I, can you tell me?" The stall owner just smiled while preparing her meal before answering her back, "Hi Natsumi, I am Takeshi and I am doing good, thanks for asking." He went on to strain the noodles once they were boiled before adding, "Backpacking, huh? I am not gonna lie, not many people do that. It must be exciting. As for your question, it seems, this is the first time you have visited this town, seeing as you don't recognize it. In that case, let me welcome you properly." He proceeded to place the finished bowl of miso ramen in front of the blonde woman, the smile having never left his face, before he said, "Welcome to Kuoh, Natsumi." That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.